Hi. Don't know if anyone's tuned in yet. Just doing a bit of an impromptu live stream, talking about using Groove Agent 5 inside of Bitwig, and just a few things to know, a few things that have been tripping me up when I've only been using Bitwig for a couple of months now. Still very much in the learning phase, uncovering new things that can be done with it every day still. It's really a wonderful playground for sound design and getting ideas going um, in some very different ways to what's available in Cubase. So I'm very happy having both doors. I think they complement each other well. Is probably the best way to describe it. You've got one that's incredible for sound design and for non-linear sequencing and just creating arpeggios with note repeats and really complex polyrhythms very easily with just a couple of modulations. Things that in Cubase would take just so much routing, MIDI channels, and automation lanes that it's just not feasible, really. And then you've got Cubase, which is just an outstanding mixing environment. The mixer just beats Bitwig hands down for me. Aside from that, you've got ARA2, you've got built-in pitch correction. I have Melodyne, which I would probably use in ARA2 most of the time anyway. And yeah, so Cubase does bring a lot to the table. You've got control room. You've got just it's amazing for working with audio. So yeah, uh, I'm happy to have both, but I think there's really just a couple of things that if Cubase had in Bitwig, I doubt I would feel the need to really have Bitwig. I bought it for the modulation system, and I've fallen in love with a lot more other stuff that is available in Bitwig since I've been working my way through learning it. Today, though, we're going to talk about drum slicing in particular. A few things about it. We're going to kind of look at the transient detection algorithm here in Bitwig and compare it to Steinberg's algorithm. And yeah, pro tip: Steinberg's is better. It's kind of understandable. They've been using this technology for a long time. I think before Bitwig even existed. And I think Bitwig does it in a different way. I think I remember it maybe on one of Polarity's channels or Matthias Holmgren were talking about how the transient detection in Bitwig is granular or spectral versus the conventional way, which is the other one. I'm not too knowledgeable about it, but apparently Bitwig uses a different standard of transient detection, and we'll have a look at that now. So I've got a beat here. I think it's just one from a drum and bass beat from a sample Genie pack, and I'm just going to pull it in at project tempo. I think it is a 172 BPM file, and that's what my project's set at. I think if we were to zoom right in here, it might be a little bit out. Yeah, nothing worth worrying about though. Another thing we could actually touch on is the time stretching algorithm. So in the settings in Bitwig up here, you can set how audio is pulled in. Where is it? Behavior. Yeah, so you can choose, I think by default, long samples pulls them in stretched, and short samples was raw for me, I think. I just bring everything in raw. Um, I don't tend to like to use warping if I can help it. Obviously, there are times where you can't get away with it, but I would always rather just pitch it up to the if it's drums especially, pitch it up to the until you get the kind of tone or timbre that you want out of the drum. Out of the snare. The snare is probably the most important one. You want to get the right kind of sound out of the snare, and then just chop it up at that pitch, and make it fit with envelopes or something. That's kind of how I would rather work with drums than just time stretching it to tempo. It just sounds a bit too, just artifacty. You can't really avoid it with time stretching, unfortunately. Anyway, so let's have a look at this. If we wanted to slice up this break in Bitwig, we would double click the event up there. And one thing about the way Bitwig handles audio, which is a bit weird and to get your head around at first coming from Cubase, is this right here is not an audio file. You can't just drag this to another application that supports dragging audio onto it, because this isn't an audio file, it's a container, and this is the audio file within it. And you can actually stack multiple audio files into one container. You can create like an entire sequence of synths or something and just stack it all in one audio container if you wanted to. Anyway, so that's just one thing to bear in mind. So if we wanted to slice this, we would go to onsets, and you'll see just immediately there's loads of stuff missing here. Just gonna make sure I've got, okay, yeah, that's set to headphones, and I think my master bus should be yeah, headphones. Still forgetting where that stuff is. Anyway, we're going to go into this and slice it up, and you can see Bitwig's algorithm by default has missed quite a few. I mean, they're all mostly on the grid, so it's quite easy to just double click and add them where it misses them. But one thing that is a bit annoying about Bitwig's transient detection is you don't have a threshold adjuster that I've been able to figure out anyway, that you can pull down so it catches every transient like you can in Cubase and other Steinberg software, which is why I still use Groove Agent. One of the reasons why. Groove Agent is an amazing drum sampler, so at the end of the day, it's the one I've been using for years now, so I'm going to continue using it in Bitwig, at least until the drum machine gets overhauled a little. So we've got that pretty much on point now. If we were to really zoom in on these, even the ones that it did itself, you're going to see it's not particularly even on point. These were automatically selected by the algorithm. This one here is a bit odd. It's not before the hi-hat, and it's not on the transient, it's in the middle. It's just a bit odd, and it's always a bit sloppy like that. If you look at this one, that's just going to be a massive pop right there. So it's not great. We'll just slice it like that because I don't want to waste time doing one perfect here and then one perfect in Groove Agent, because it'll be just waste a lot of time watching me move slices around. So we would just, one thing that is handy is, like, you know, in Cubase you would have to drag the audio onto Groove Agent after slicing it to do this. In Bitwig you can just right click like you can in Ableton and just slice to drum machine. I would always choose slice raw. It's even if you stretched it, like we could take this audio here, and if we were to zoom right in, because it was a little bit out, we can turn it from raw to Elastic Pro is the best sounding algorithm, same one as Cubase uses, I believe. And right here we can just do what we do in Cubase and stretch that out there. Shouldn't sound too different. Just clip in a little bit. Let's pull that down. Put it down a bit more actually, just to save your ears. So yeah, it's in it's now stretched to tempo, but if we did right click on this event, or not on the clip, sorry, these in Bitwig, the ones at the arrangement level are called clips, and this audio file is an audio event. Whereas in Cubase, these guys are called audio events. So I keep saying the wrong thing. So yeah, you have to forgive me if I keep screwing that up. Anyway, right click and slice to drum machine. So we'll slice it raw, even though we've stretched it here. You can bounce it as it is stretched. We're going to slice it at onsets, which is what this calls transients, and hit OK. and it's just going to immediately create a drum machine on the channel below. And the way this works is it is a little bit like Groove Agent, where each pad has its own slice, and you've got full control of basically a clone of the native sampler. But that comes with a few pitfalls. So if we wanted to say send this all to separate outputs and group up all of the kicks, all of the snares, all of the hi-hats onto a bus, I haven't found a way to do that particularly intuitively yet, unless I'm just missing something. If anybody knows a way in Bitwig to do this more easily, let me know. But if we were to go into this drum machine, I think we actually have to do it in the mixer even to be able to see the channels. There might be a control to show the output somewhere, but if we go to the mixer, right, if I just pull this up a bit, oh, that's as high as it goes. Right here, there's all of our channels, but we've got one channel for every individual slice, and I don't like that at all. It's not practical if you're working with breaks to have everything bust out to its own channel, each individual slice like this. And then basically this drum machine channel acts like the bus for all of that. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that at all. If we now pull in Groove Agent, and I'm just going to delete this and pull it back in raw, zoom right back out here. So yeah, so far not a huge fan of the Bitwig drum machine. It's one of the caveats, but I really didn't buy it for the plugins. I bought it for its modulation capability, really, and it continues to impress on that level. So I'm just going to load on the same channel as the break, because in Bitwig we have hybrid tracks and it's just awesome. So I'm just going to load Groove Agent here. Oh. Always takes a little bit to load the first time because I've got quite a lot of libraries. There we go. I'm not even sure if it will even find them in here. Oh yeah, looks like it. Okay. If we were to just drag the audio, and again, if I try to drag this audio clip straight onto Groove Agent from here, it's not going to let me, because it's not an audio file, it's a container with audio files in it. So I have to open it, drag the actual audio file from here. And that threw me off for the longest time, I have to admit. Yeah, that had me really scratching my head for a hot minute, and it works the same with MIDI, which we'll get to shortly. So we can delete this clip now. Or another thing that's great about Bitwig is you don't have to delete anything. You can just move it to the clip launcher, save it for later, for a rainy day, and there it goes. It's out the way. So I'm just going to expand this, close the browser up, move this over here a bit, and so we can see a bit more of the break. So the first thing I would want to check here, probably actually, let's do it in Bitwig. Just want to make sure the beginning of the beat is on point. Oh yeah, we'll just drag it back out from here. That's what I was going to do. I'll zoom in. See, this is a good example too. I'm just going to make this there we go. Yeah, it snapped right there, that'll do. Okay, and then I'm just going to bounce in place. Alright, there we go. So we've got that beginning sorted out, and let's drag that to Groove Agent instead. It's going to delete. Okay, let's drag that back in from the bottom because I always forget about that. There we go. And move in the edited version over here. Okay, so we've got our beat in Groove Agent. The very beginning of the file should be nice and trimmed up now. Yep, that'll do nicely right on the zero crossing. So we'll hit slice and see what the transient detection looks like compared to Bitwig. Okay, you don't really see it until you hit create slices. And you can see it looks like it's captured everything. Maybe missed something here and maybe here. But that is pretty good going for starters. And another thing that I love here is that if we put on this auto zoom slice feature here, and obviously we're going to want snap to zeros on, when we click one of the drum pads it'll automatically zoom it big for us here. There we go, and we can see. I usually, if it's got a pop at the end, I'll just sort that out. If it doesn't, I'll leave it be. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. See, that one's fine. It's got a little one. Just sort that out. And this is why I didn't want to correct it properly in Bitwig, because I don't want to have to go through this process twice. It's annoying. You can see on some of these hi-hats it'll try and catch the peakier part on ones that kind of whoosh in like this. Like this one here, I'm actually going to let it catch the end of that, and we can sort that out with an envelope because it looks like the transient of a snare right next to it. Or a kick, yeah. That'll do. End of this one. Better. You can see it's almost right on point. It's like a sample out or something, and when you've got snap to zeros on and it zooms in at this level for you automatically, it's much easier to edit. That'll do. And you know, you only have to do it once. Once it's done, and then you don't have to worry about it again. You can always save it as a preset and call it back for next time. And that's one of the areas where Bitwig really shines, is you can just save entire chains of stuff and call it back whenever you want. I haven't actually tested it with Groove Agent yet to see if it saves the samples. You might have to make sure you save the kit first. Alright, so here it's missed one. Easily solved though, just hold Alt and click, left click. There we got a new slice. And it will have automatically squeezed it into the sequence here. Another thing that is awesome about Groove Agent and working with slices is in Bitwig Drum Machine, each drum hit has its own dedicated sampler with its own loop or sample start and end position. So that means if you move this here, or a better example would be on the next one. If we move this here, find one that's out. This will do. If we move this in the Bitwig Drum Machine, the start point of the next one would still be exactly where it was. Whereas in Groove Agent, now that we've moved that back to that zero crossing, got rid of the pop, on the next one you'll see it no longer starts on that sharp transient, it starts exactly where we've moved it. Right there. And that is just such a time saver when it comes to tightening up these slice positions. Especially when you're working on a full long beat like this. Normally I'd only be working on a bar, but this is just a quick example to show you. Groove Agent's really the only reason I don't really use it for the libraries so much anymore in here. For one shots I've been using EXO more lately. But for break slicing in particular, this is so much better, even to use in Bitwig without the functionality that it gives you in Cubase, like exporting drum maps to Cubase and things like that. And that's another thing I'll show you, is the drum maps in Bitwig aren't particularly great. So it's another area that's just a bit vanilla, needs could do with a bit of love, but I can always do that stuff in Cubase. I could always do my drums in Cubase. Ideally I want to try and get to a point where I'm doing the creative part of the process in Bitwig and I'm exporting audio to Cubase to mix. I really don't like the Bitwig mixer very much at the moment. Maybe over time I'll get more used to mixing in here, but it just, yeah, the tiny little faders and the faders being actually over the level meters and stuff, and yeah, it's all a bit strange and alien to me still. Let's pull that back a bit. And it doesn't matter too much because the slicing will preserve the groove. But yeah, I mean, you can see how much closer to being on point this was than the Bitwig one. It's almost always right there, just maybe needs a tiny touch. And honestly, I'm being really kind of anal retentive here. You could just highlight all of these drum pads by shift clicking one and then the one at the other end, and you could do some like master envelope shaping and just put fades on them, but you do kind of lose a lot of the room sound of a break. It makes it sound a bit choppy, I find, if you mess too much with the end. Anyway, let's have a listen. Oh, just put on, and you'll see on the pattern pad here, this should be the good thing about the Full Groove Agent 5 and using it in VSTs, you do actually get like basically the Cubase drum editor here. And at the moment it's very basic, we'll come back to that in a minute, but right here's our pattern. This is the MIDI of what we just sliced up. Oh, hold on. Interesting. Oh, okay. That's more like it. Let's try that. Alright, yeah, sounds fine. It's not time stretched in any way, and that's one of the reasons I like working with Groove Agent, is you can audio warp stuff before you slice it. If you go to the sample tab down here, you've got some audio warping, and I think it probably uses the elastic algorithm that Cubase does. I don't know for sure what it uses, but I've never tended to use it. Just slice them up at the pitch that you want them at, really. Whatever works. Anyway, let's get back. Just put follow transport on. There we go. So with follow transport on, you don't even need any MIDI in the arrangement. It'll just play whichever pattern pad is selected in a loop. Now where this gets kind of interesting is, now this is kind of always been a bit of a laughable subject to me, how bad this is, but I'll just show you. We can use this classify button, and this will supposed to figure out what are kicks, snares, hi-hats and such. On breaks, because of all of the room noise and everything, it tends to get things wrong very often, especially if they've been heavily processed. So we'll see what we get. Alright, so apparently there's no kick drums. No kick drums in this break. What have we got? That's obviously a kick. We can just change it. Hat. Now that's an odd one. It doesn't usually mistake hi-hats for snares. Oh, yeah, I'll call that a snare. That's a kick. Call that a snare. Get some little rolls in with the snares there. Next bank. Call that a snare. Oh no. I'll leave it as a hat. Kick. It's weird how it's mistaken every single kick drum for a snare. It's not usually this bad. Not on breaks that are this kind of straight anyway. It might be that there's percussion rolling in the background, throwing it off or something. But I'll show you the benefit of doing this in a second. Does have its plus side. It's not all just being absolutely anal retentive about meaningless tasks. Promise. Alright, we'll call that another snare. Okay, I think we're done, thankfully. Alright, so the reason I did that is because if we go to the mixer here now, and this comes back to what I was saying about, I'm just naming them kick, snare, hat, and just tab twice to move to the next name, which is quite nice. There we go. And if we right click on this now, and you can see it's coloured all the kicks blue, we can go select pads of same class, and that selects all the kick drums all throughout that whole, and that's kind of why I used a long loop to demonstrate this, because otherwise you're going to having to go through all of these banks and control clicking the ones you want, and you'll always be second guessing and double checking that you've actually not missed any. That just takes care of it. And then on the edit page on the main tab here, now that we've selected our buses, down here is where we can select the output for each slice. So it'll do it for groups that you have selected here all in one go, so we can just send all of those to the buses for the agent, to the kick. We'll right click on the hat, do select same class, and do the same thing to the hat bus, and the same with the snares. And that's one of the things I love about Groove Agent for bussing breaks out like that. It's super easy. Then if we play it while we've got the mixer open, we don't really need it quite as big anymore. So yeah, that's quite handy. And then from here, what we can do is send these to the external outputs next in line. And instead of when we sliced in the Bitwig drum machine and we looked at the external outputs and we just had every slice laid out in front of us on its own channel, which is just awful. Now what we can do is go to our Groove Agent here, add a chain, and just add 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8, and then we can name them up here. Kick, snare, and hat, and then each of those within that output chain basically has its own effects bus here, and then anything we put outside of that routing acts like processing on a bus. So if we were to basically, the way we look at this is, if we, let's just drag some MIDI out so it looks like we've made something. I'm just going to turn off all these solos here. I've done it there actually. If we go to the pattern now, and this is another thing to bring up that's quite interesting that had me scratching my head too. There's our pattern, right? We can drag that out to Bitwig, and or we can edit it in Groove Agent, which is honestly kind of almost preferable to me for this reason alone. I've always liked how Cubase handles drum maps. It's pretty handy. In here, if we go to the pattern editor, now that we've assigned them all, you can see they're all named, and you can do some interesting tricks like say we like that kick but none of the others. We could right click there and say set notes as same class to C1, and it'll change every kick in the whole break to that kick. We could do it with a snare. Be a bit weird because we've got a lot of ghost hits of snares actually, so I won't do it with the snare. It'll be really horrible. But you get the idea. So it comes with some benefits to go through and classify them and just choose the correct class, because you get shortcuts with arrangement and you get shortcuts with bussing. And in a minute I'll go back to the bussing and show you just, it's just so much cleaner in Bitwig once you do it this way. Anyway, we've changed our kick drum or whatever, and now we can drag this MIDI, or maybe, yeah, you may prefer to edit it at a DAW level, so we can just drag it out. Let me just zoom. There we go. Just get that. I've still got my P shortcut. I brought it over from Cubase with me. Anyway, so now we could take this bar, or sorry, bar 2, move this over to bar 4, maybe. Take this. Duplicate that twice actually, and maybe this middle one, we could move that kick back up to the one that had that symbol or whatever on it. Yeah, it'll phase like that if you move MIDI in and you forget to go to Groove Agent and turn that off. It'll be playing over itself. Didn't change anything. Maybe it's that one. Yeah. Okay, let's just consolidate that into one event. So now, say we wanted to pull that 4-bar clip back to Groove Agent to a pattern pad. Now this is something that I ran into the other night that became a bit of a head scratcher for a while. And so let's try that now. In Cubase, you could just drag MIDI out to the arrangement, edit it there if you didn't like doing it in Groove Agent. And if we look at the MIDI here, I prefer to do it in Groove Agent in Bitwig, honestly, because if we go to the drum editor, nothing's named. I don't even know if you can even customize the names. Maybe I'm missing something, or it's just an area that needs a bit of work. Anyway, I can do it in Groove Agent a lot easier, so that's kind of what I do. Usually I'll move things around a bit in here. If I want to do full bars of differences and changes, I would just select this and move it over here, or whatever I wanted to do, but for moving just little drum hits around, I'll do it in here first and then drag what I've got out. So we've pretty much covered everything. We can look at our output chain now. So if I let that play through again, you can see our kick, snare and hat have all got their own processing chain. So if I hit the blue plus on any of these, that is a dedicated chain for that output. But if we just if I close that, if we put something on this grey plus or open this is the master processing chain for this unit. that would also act kind of like bus processing, just for these drums. If you wanted a full drum bus, you would have to still group this with other things, which, so that's the more conventional workflow. But another thing that is great here, and I use this feature all the time, is once I've done with my MIDI, I can just drag it into the clip launcher, hide it away. I can bounce in place, got my audio, resample it immediately if that's what I want to do. We turn off Groove Agent now. We've got our audio of that back again. Rearranged. So yeah, it does work kind of nice, but when it comes to MIDI, there is another kind of pitfall, like I've been saying. So say we did want to drag this MIDI clip here into Groove Agent. We can't do that. We can put it on the same track as the audio here, and that's another thing that's just amazing about Bitwig. It's just awesome. Like, if we just let that play. Now that is cool, being able to have audio and MIDI on the same channel. So yeah, we've got the MIDI clip over there. You can just bounce to audio over the MIDI as well. It's next level. I love it. Anyway, let's get back to dragging MIDI onto here. So what we would need to do is basically have the MIDI clip that you want highlighted like this, and File, Export, MIDI, and I've got a folder for that in MIDI files. Let's call this beat 140322, and then from that folder we can drag the MIDI out and put it on a Groove Agent pad. One thing I've noticed is it always tends to add just a little extra bit to the length, so you just got to kind of clip it back in, and then that'll be fine. Let me see. It put a load at the beginning as well. Oh, I think it's because it's bounced this whole area at the front as well. There we go. Basically identical to that, but yeah, you do have to export it as a MIDI file, because note events in Bitwig technically don't use MIDI at all, and it just lets you do some kind of cool stuff, like use certain note as a modulation source, or yeah, I mean it's really kind of deep and mind-blowing how far this goes with Bitwig. And I'm just constantly finding stuff that blows my mind. I think I might start doing these little evening broadcasts a bit more regularly, just as I learn stuff and want to share little tips that I find on Bitwig, or using Bitwig in conjunction with Steinberg tools. Like, honestly, the only thing that I'm missing is the drum map export to Cubase feature from Groove Agent. I really use that feature a lot, and then I would do all my editing in the Cubase MIDI editor, in the drum map editor, and everything would be labeled how I'd labeled it in Groove Agent and stuff. And then you've also got the export mixer with the acoustic agent, and I honestly haven't even tried loading an acoustic agent. Let's try. See if it's stable. I haven't tried any of my libraries, honestly, since I installed Cubase 12 yet. Let's try, are they all there? Try Funk Essentials maybe. Yep, seems good. So, yeah. Go to. Wow, I haven't used this in a while. Yeah, since I got Addictive Drums, really, I haven't used the acoustic agent at all. I do quite like how the kits sound. Really, it's just a shame that you can't interchange the drum kit pieces like you can in every other plugin like this on the market. Really, but Groove Agent makes up for it with some pretty deep sampling capability, honestly. So it's all good, really. Sampling capability is a bit more important to me making electronic music than acoustic drum kits anyway, so let's make that nice and tidy. Anyway, yeah, that's really all I wanted to kind of talk about, was just using Groove Agent as a plugin in Bitwig, or really another DAW. I think a lot of the stuff's probably only really relevant to Bitwig because of the way Bitwig handles note events not being conventional MIDI, and the way it handles audio clips as well being a little different to the norm. So it does kind of get in the way of a lot of drag and drop functionality, and I might run into that with some of my other plugins that support dragging and dropping between the DAW and the plugin interface itself, but we'll see. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, anyone that's watched. Probably gonna call it a night there. Just wanted to do a quick broadcast talking about Groove Agent, because I haven't really covered Groove Agent in a long time. I do still love it for working with breaks. I mean, as a drum sampler for slicing, you saw how much more on point the slicing algorithm is, the Steinberg one over the Bitwig one, so already it's a huge plus to me. That's something that Bitwig really could do with a lot of work on, is transient detection and beat slicing, honestly. But other than that, I'm floored by how ahead of the curve it is in almost every way for sound design and synthesis and modulation and the grid, and just keeps on going. It's like a rabbit hole, and you know, you can modulate a DC offset device to simulate a waveform and create your own oscillators, and it gets ridiculous how deep you can go from some of the videos I've watched and some of the tips I've picked up. And yeah, I've still got a lot to learn, and it's going to be a fun process though, where I have to be honest, over the past few years, using Cubase for sound design was starting to feel a bit more like a chore than enjoyable. It was just so much routing, so much automation, where a basic LFO would do. And a lot of the time you're working with virtual analog synths that only have two envelopes that are already pre-assigned to amplitude and filter, and you've got to then work with those same shapes for any other thing you modulate with them, where you might want to use a different shape. Any of those instruments that are just crying out for a third envelope and a couple more LFOs, it's not a problem with Bitwig. It just opens up the possibilities of, it just breaks down the limitations that a lot of these plugins that are built on the limitations of analog gear have when it comes to modulation. You couldn't fit an infinity oscillators and infinity LFOs into an analog synth, so obviously there are limitations that are going to be broken with software. But Bitwig just lets you do it in unconventional ways that would take so much. Just even thinking about how to do a lot of the stuff in Cubase makes my head hurt. There would be so much busing and manual routing and sending MIDI data to LFOs to trigger, and there's none of that in Bitwig. It's just you add an LFO, you drag a parameter on any plugin, and it modulates it, and that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful thing. Love it. Anyway, Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to wrap it up there for the night, and I'll try and get on again soon. All right. See ya.